Welcome to my acrylic painting channel. I'm Karen Rice. I'm going to be demonstrating a step-by-step lavender fields in acrylics. And just to say a big thank you to Chris from my watercolour membership for the suggestion of this painting. I really hope you like this tutorial, Chris. So let's get started. These are all the materials I'll be using, and a full list of these can be found in the description below, along with a colour list and colour alternatives. I've also included a starter video for those of you starting out in acrylics. It really gives you some useful advice, and a link for the reference photograph can also be found in the description below. If you like this tutorial and you'd like to see more like it, why not subscribe to my acrylic channel and you will get updates of my latest videos. And if you have any comments or questions, please put them in the comments section below. I decided to draw my painting in with an HB pencil because there's quite a little bit of detail here, and I just wanted to have a nice structured painting. There is quite a lot of sky though, so I'm starting off with my 3/8 inch flat brush, but you can use a larger brush if you like. I've diluted my acrylics. Just in this first instance, I won't be diluting them after this, but it's just to paint sort of an underpainting, and it stops this white canvas paper staring at me in the face. And it's like a practice run through before you start painting your picture. So I'm just filling in the sort of, it's almost a bit like painting by numbers. I'm just filling in some colours here, so light blue sky, sort of I've used a little bit of blue, a touch of violet and white for the distant mountains, and now I am painting the buildings with a little bit of yellow ochre, and it's slightly diluted as well, still using this little flat brush. And it's just to really block in these buildings. Don't worry about the details, just block in the shapes with a sort of mid-tone wash. And I'm adding now some green and the little bit of violet and the yellow ochre together, and I'm going to start painting in the trees. Again, don't worry about the shades or anything like this, just block in the sort of the general colour, i.e. green. I've just mixed up a little bit of orange now, and you can add a little bit of yellow ochre, and I'm just painting the sort of this very warm sandy colour on the ground area, and just painting these gaps. And remember, these marks appear to meet on the horizon, so all these diagonals sort of merge together on the horizon to create the perspective. I'm just mixing up a little bit of violet now, and I'm just painting this. It's slightly creamier now than the watered down sky, but I'm just again painting this wet on dry with my small flat brush, and again painting this sort of diagonals towards the horizons. They all look like they're meeting at the same point, the vanishing point. And I'm painting a little bit of dark in between these rows of lavender as well. And the marks and the foreground, or the ones nearest to you, are slightly bigger, and the marks that are further away are smaller, and that gives a nice feeling of perspective as well, besides the linear perspective of the lines merging at one point into the distance. I'm just using the flat brush now, added a little bit of white to the violet, and just blocking in a lot more of the lavender fields now with really nice free brush strokes. And you can try to sort of vary your colour mixes, i.e. adding a little bit more violet to some, a little bit more white. So you've got light tones and you've got slightly darker and mid tones there. I've used some of the darks that I've created using the green and the violet just to put some dark tones in around the buildings and the trees as well, just to start sort of building up these darker areas. I've allowed my painting to dry fully. You can do this with a hairdryer, and I'm mixing up some cobalt blue and some white, and this is without any water now, except that my brush might be a little bit damp, but I'm applying this now wet on dry with the strongest colour at the top because that's the nearest part of the sky to us, so that we want to make that tonal value a bit stronger to create depth in your painting. And I'm just making sure I have plenty of paint on my brush when I'm painting any sort of large area. You make sure you really load your brush with acrylic paint, as you can see I'm doing here now, each sort of time, and it kind of is easier to blend it as well. But if you have trouble, you can use, as I did there, a little bit of water on your fingertips to blend the paint as well. So I'm adding a little bit more white as I go towards the horizon, so as it gets lighter, and I'm blending it and going back and forth with the brush. As you saw there, I put a little bit on my table surface there. Don't worry, it's not my dining room table, it's just my art room, but I'm just putting a paler colour towards the horizon now just to finish off. Once you finish your sky, you can start painting your building. So I'm just adding really some more yellow ochre with a tiny touch of that sort of violet colour that I used previously for the lavender fields, and I'm just sort of giving a little bit of that colour to the houses there, varying it, adding a touch of white, adding a touch of yellow ochre here and there, even a little bit of orange and violet, to sort of get the colours of these buildings. They're so interesting, aren't they? They've got all these warm tonal colours and they're gorgeous. Just painting some orangey tones and lighter tones on the sort of gravel area there, and some mid to light tones with my round small brush on the tops of the trees as well, really starting to build in some details, using that little round brush as well to paint in some violet, sort of lavender there, sort of building up the sort of tonal values there and the details. acrylic painting is all about sort of working dark to light, but I tend to use sort of mid-tones to begin with, some darks, and just sort of build up, you know, take my time and just half close my eyes as well and try to see the darks, the lights, the mid-tones. What you don't want to end up with is a lot of flat mid-tones. You want those lights. I try to leave the lights to the last, and even though I've squeezed some white out, I try not to use too much of it. So as you can see here, I'm just building up the lavender, the darks here, especially this left hand side. If you look at the reference photograph, there's not a lot of definition in there, it's just tonal value. I'm using a little bit of cerulean and white here with a tiny touch of violet and painting these distant fields. Now I have to say it's quite tricky to get the right tone. I felt it was right here, but I do actually make it lighter just to let you know. So I thought I'd show you my process here, because sometimes it's quite tricky to tell, especially something like a distant mountain, whether you've got the tonal value right. I quite like this colour against the sort of trees and the house, but I think it might be a little bit strong. Well, looking back on it now, a little bit strong for the mountains, and I do change it. I dried my painting and I'm just now painting this next lighter colour over the top using cobalt blue, a little bit of cerulean and some white as well. So I've made the colour slightly cooler. It was too warm and too strong coming forward. And you'll find that with colour mixing, it's a powerful thing. It's not just trying to get the colour right. It's got to be the right sort of the cool or warmth of it. And if the colour's very warm, that's that it's got, look, almost like a red tone in it. It comes forward. So I wanted to make it cooler and bluer so that it would recede. So I'm just adding a little bit more light here, lighter in tone, just to really sort of push that mountain back a bit so it doesn't sort of come forward and flattens the painting. So if it looks like it's receding, it will create depth because it looks further away. So my mountains are painted, and now I'm going to add a little bit of yellow, a touch of violet and some white. It makes a beautiful beigey sort of colour, and I'm just adding a little bit of this to the buildings. I'm not painting over the entire building, I'm just putting it here and there because there's lots of shadows and things on these buildings as well. I'm keeping it very, very loose. I don't want to get too tight. I'm painting a very impressionistic way, so it's almost like blocking in colour. If you want to get more of a realistic look, you just build up on the detail all the time. And it's almost like, I always compare painting to when you focus in on the lens of a camera. So when it's out of focus, it's quite blurry. So I'm sort of just turning my lens a little bit here, just to kind of bring it a little bit into focus, but I don't want to bring it too much into focus, and because I like that sort of impressionistic look. But if you want that more of a realistic look, just adding a little bit more detail can get you that. So I put almost like a salmony pink colour on the rooftop where the sun is hitting that, and a little bit in the foreground there, and that's adding a tiny touch of pink to that yellow and that white and violet colour. I'm adding a little bit of green now and yellow to this little strip of light grass just ahead of the lavender fields there, and it's quite a nice contrast to the darker distant trees, or the bottom of those distant trees are a little bit darker. So I'm using a little round brush, and my painting is only 7 by 10, and that's why I'm using smaller brushes. So I'm actually putting some mid-tones now in the trees using this little round brush, trying to get some texture on top of the trees as well, using some yellow and green. You could use a little bit of yellow ochre just to warm it up or make it a little bit more earthy in tone. And I'm adding a touch of violet there as well. So it's quite nice just to vary those greens. The light is on top of the trees and the darks are underneath the foliage. So it's really just half closing your eyes just to see that, to make sure you've got your darks and lights and some mid-tones in there as well. So my painting has dried and I'm just working on some lighter tones now on the left hand side of the rows of lavender there. The darks are on the right and there's a lot sort of lighter on the top and towards the left there. So I'm just working on that now with my small round brush, wet on dry, making sure the marks in the foreground are bigger and the marks in the distance are smaller. I'm just adding some lighter marks now to sort of the middle distance there, using some white with a tiny touch of green in there. And I felt my mountains have got too high. Now the beauty of acrylics is you can just paint over the top once the painting has dried. And that's what I'm doing here, just lowering the mountains and using some white with a tiny speck of cobalt blue to get this light sort of horizon area and to get rid of the top of the mountains. Just blending that sky there. Now the sky has dried, I've given it a blow dry and I'm just using my flat brush here to paint in some of the texture at the top of those trees with a nice light green, some yellow and green there. I'm adding a little bit of violet there as well, just to create some real texture there to bring these trees to life. I'm being very bold now. I'm going to really go for putting some darks in on these trees just to really pop them, you know, really sort of make them look sort of more 3D. Using my small flat brush, I'm using violet and green and just painting around the house on the end there as well, and just putting these dark marks here and there. My painting has dried and I'm actually now sort of building up the lights now on this sort of red gravel that's on the ground here, or sand, and I'm using a little flat brush, using red, yellow and some white to create sort of the depth of colour and also the light tonal values. really brings that foreground to life, that lovely rich orangey colour. I'm using a small round brush now to paint in this tree on the left here, using the side of the brush, using a mid green and a light green to give this texture of this tree, the textures, the details, the darks and the lights. I'm getting towards the, as I say, the business end of the painting. I'm starting just to put in the details. Some of them are dark, some of them are light, just to really bring the painting to life. I really enjoy this part of the painting. I know a lot of people find it difficult. A lot of the questions students ask me is, when do I know the painting is finished? It's really, painting is all about telling a story as well. And the story in here is that I want to sort of bring, sort of lead your eye from these lavender fields up to the farmhouse with the trees on the right and the lovely light sky. So I'm just sort of getting in that detail to finish off, especially on the farmhouse, putting little darks, little light details here and there to finish off. I'm just adding a little bit of yellow as well on this orangey area of the ground here, just to give a few little sparkly sort of highlights, and some white into my violet here to create texture and light on this gorgeous lavender. Remember, bigger marks in the foreground to create that depth as well, but the light sort of really brings it to life. I added a little bit of green as well, not a lot. It's just really in the foreground there, just to create a little bit of variety. And as you see in the photograph as well, there is a little bit of green that comes through. So I thought that's quite a nice little touch. I'm just mixing up some really nice darks as well. Sometimes you can lose your darks when you put all your lights on. You can get a little bit too sort of carried away. So I've added a little bit more dark. I'm just finishing off now, just putting a touch more detail on this lovely farmhouse here with my small little round brush, just to really kind of bring it to life, and a few little highlights here and there. I'm just going to put in some of the tree trunks and branches as well, with a mixture of the violet and the green, and it really does kind of bring the painting to life. A few more little highlights and on top of the lavender as well. It's really easy just to sort of say you're finished, and then you think, oh, just one more little bit. And a good way of actually seeing if you have finished is to show your painting to a mirror. It really can be a very objective, fresh pair of eyes, or take a photograph with your smartphone and have a look at it. That can really help. So as you can see, I'm just finessing with a few little details here. I've got a little puddle of a lavender colour, that's the violet, with some white, and I'm spattering this colour. I've added more of a bluey tone as well, and just spattering here for some texture and detail in the foreground. And spattering does help me to stop fiddling. And here is the finished painting, and I've taken off the framing tape to reveal a lovely white border. I really hope you enjoy this tutorial, and if you'd like to see more like this, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments section below. Thank you for watching and for supporting my channel. Happy painting. Bye for now.